Hi, good morning, everybody. Hope you all can hear me well this morning. So excited to be here. Welcome to Sports Pro, the evolving fan, new experiences to drive engagement. My name is Anita Johnson. I'm the president of business operations for DC United. Joined in with my hoodie this morning. I felt like it was only appropriate when I looked at everybody else on screen. So excited to be with you all today. Today, we have some Twitter royalty on, some founders and some great NBA insights as well. So excited to introduce our guest on our panel today. First up, we have Bohan, founder and CEO of Buzzer, founded in January of 2020. Previously at Twitter for 6 years, working on the live content team. Bo graduated from Cornell with a BA in history and MBA from Columbia. I can't speak this morning. Buzzer is a mobile-first live sports platform built on micropayments, interest-driven mobile notifications, and authentication. Thank you so much, Bo. Happy to have you here this morning.
Glad to be here.
Next up, we've all seen him on Twitter. If you don't follow him, you probably should. TJ, welcome TJ to our panel. He's a Georgia graduate, leads all U.S. sports partnerships for Twitter. Prior to Twitter, worked for ESPN with a focus on Watch ESPN and ESPN.com, chair of Blackbirds, Twitter's employee resource group that celebrates and encourages diverse perspectives. And last but not least, and named SBJ 40 Under 40 in 2020. We'll round out our panel today with Sam Farber, SVP of Digital Strategy, Partnerships and Business Development for the NBA. Sam has been in the NBA for 11 years with a BA from UPenn and an MBA from NYU. He's a big Patriots fan. It's been a season. Leads NBA digital strategy, partnerships, and biz development, and leads content licensing and distribution deals focusing on digital platforms. Welcome all to the panel today. So we're going to dive right in. Yeah, welcome. We're going to dive right in. Obviously, people are here to hear what you all have to say and not really me today, which is something I'm excited to actually ask the questions instead of being the one on the other side this morning. We'll just start off and we'll take questions throughout. I know the live feed is going on. I have my app here on my phone, so I will try to watch that as I go. So you'll see me looking down to get some live questions from you all. But first up, how would you describe today's sports fans? Are there levels to the modern fan? And I'll put this to each of you all because I believe with each different perspective, you're engaging with sports fans in different ways. So, Sam, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think today's sports fan is incredibly different and certainly, distinct from sports fans over the past, few years or decades. And I think mainly it's because of a couple of things. One is diversity. Like the word ethnically diverse, there's incredible age diversity, there's geographic diversity. With digital, it's global. So it's really an unbelievably diverse and multifaceted group that we've got. And also, I think their tastes are incredibly different, because of all of the content that's available to them on all the different platforms that exist. The fan base is incredibly diverse in taste, diverse in preferences, which we can get into later. I'm sure there are subsequent questions about how we deal with that, but I would say number one is diverse. That's sort of how I would describe our fans today.
Absolutely. And going to Bo, Sam mentioned about content and the diversity of that, and what Buzzer is doing in this space right now is pretty phenomenal. How would you describe today's sports fan?
Yeah, I will say that the love for sport is intergenerational, but there is a huge gap when it comes to consumption of live sports. We would see the older generation that are consuming live long form that's optimized for linear television. And then you see this new generation of Gen Z and younger millennials that are really consuming highlights and clips near live. That are optimized for Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and so forth. I think that the evolution of the current fan, especially the younger Gen Z fan, has been individual or player first, right? And so you would see a lot of LeBron fans or Steph Curry fans or Sue Bird or Megan Rapinoe fans before the actual team or the sport itself. And that's largely thanks to the insight that you get and the glimpse into their lives and their beliefs and their values through platforms like Twitter, my former employer. And just to hype TJ up a little bit, but you know what they believe in, you know what they stand for, right? And so I think the new fan, the Gen Z fan, has been tremendously mission driven and value driven, and they really kind of root for the athlete that uses their platform, like LeBron, to really elevate the discussion that we have, much needed discussion that is needed in our country. So I think that sports has really elevated in a way that is a lot more meaningful and impactful.
I mean, he set you up, TJ. Your thoughts on this?
Now, Bo just called me an old sports fan, and he's right to a certain degree. I mean, growing up, I sat for hours upon hours. I would watch reruns of SportsCenter. That's just how I consume sports, and that's how I built my affinity for sports. But as Bo mentioned, the fragmentation and the ubiquity of sports content, the accessibility of it is such that fans can consume it in snackable and bite-sized ways. So I think that has definitely been a key, something that is attributed to the change in the sports habits. But another thing I would say too is I remember looking at the box score and being excited that my favorite player had a triple-double or caught a few touchdown passes. But it's become much bigger than the box score now, right? Like, you are excited because you know that your favorite player may be Dame Lillard and he just dropped an album last year. Your favorite player may be Sue Bird and she is a super sneakerhead, right? So understanding the depth to these players that you love has become something that is even more of a priority to the modern day sports fan. Yeah, it's cool that my favorite player can get buckets and throw a bunch of touchdown passes, but I also want to know what he's like, what she's like, what are they interested in, what type of music are they listening to, what kind of clothes do they wear. So the sports fan expectations have certainly become higher. I think part of that is attributed to the fact that platforms have done a really great job of leaning into storytelling, telling you more, giving you a peek under the hood. But the modern sports fan is certainly multifaceted, they're culture forward, and they want to know more. They want to peek under the hood.
Yeah. And I think you just answered my next question in the midst of that. And that was, what did you think has caused this evolution? And it sounds like it's the exposure and the storytelling and access that has really pushed this forward in that light. You know, the average sports fan consumes over 7 hours of content a day. How do you break through the clutter in a way to drive engagement? Sam, I'm going to actually toss that one to you, and thinking about what the NBA has done to continue to push forward and be one of the leaders in the sporting industry in the country and the world.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an incredible challenge. It sounds really simple, but on its face, you really have to break through the clutter by creating great content on the platforms that people spend time, and optimize that content for that particular platform. And it sounds really simple, but it's much more difficult in practice. And I think what TJ and Bo were getting at is a really good example of that. You know, it's not good enough to say that a game is happening that night, or there's a big event going on. We've All-Star weekend this weekend. Given the fact that everybody has so many choices, given the fact that they have basically an infinite number of things that they can do literally with a tap of their finger, we have to make people care about our sport and about our players. And you really have to answer the so what, the why should you care on a much deeper level than just, hey, it's on and we can just rest on our laurels because we're the NBA and we've been around since 1946 and that's cool. So for us, it's about platform optimized content, making sure that we have a robust offering everywhere. I mean, one of the ways that we look at it is we think about each post on each platform as, what if this were the only post or the only platform that a particular fan is consuming us? We take that much care into each specific thing that we publish, because frankly, that may be, in the sea of their news feed or the sea of their timeline, that may be the only chance you get to expose your brand to them and to get them to care about you. So, I mean, for us, I think it's just being incredibly deliberate. And then the last thing, and then I'll shut up, is I think it's also, looking at the data in real time, which again is like a really not touchy-feely and kind of nerdy answer, but one of the great things about digital, one of the great things about where the world is going is the fact that you get near real-time feedback. We can tell if something's popping almost immediately after we post it. We can tell if fans like or dislike something by just looking at NBA Twitter and seeing what the pulse is at any given moment. Falling out of touch with that and ignoring that is a recipe for disaster in this world, because people will just forget about you.
I love that. Anything else to add, TJ, on this one? I think you covered it.
Yeah,
Sam.
I can add this. I can add a little bit color on that. I mean, not to always talk about how TJ and I work together at Twitter. We actually started on the same day and met during orientation. But stealing one of TJ's lines, because I've always learned during my time at Twitter to steal TJ's lines, is Twitter is the world's sports bar, right? And I've always, you hear kind of the excitement of the crowd while people are watching the game, right? And the inspiration behind Buzzer itself was, what if you can't see the television in the sports bar, right? What if you don't know what channel it's on? What if you don't know to be there, right? And so in the midst of a very crowded content landscape, everyone is competing for attention, right? And so just to talk about the Buzzer, the product a little bit, we're building three simple yet connected products. One is micropayments, meaning pay for content that you want to watch and what you want to watch only, right? We find that the current market landscape is very subscription driven, and that is fine, right? There is a consumer for that. But what about the casual fans, the younger fans that are not traditionally subscription driven, right? How do we lower the barrier of access to that content? Second is real time interest-based mobile notifications. So simply put, you tell us what you're interested in, we'll let you know when those interesting moments happen. So this is really around curation and discoverability of live moments that are otherwise ephemeral, right? When that moment is gone, it's a clip on Twitter. So let me catch you live, even if it's for a short live window. And then third, to really pay respects to the broader sports ecosystem, we know that everyone's a subscriber. So tell us what they are and authenticate those with us. And if the live look-in falls within the rights that you already pay for, that's fine. Just use us as a content curation tool and a discovery mechanism. But if not, then you pay the micropayment, right? And so, again, it's really to accommodate the evolving fan and really kind of break through the noise and making these live moments discoverable, because otherwise it's a clip, right? And so why not pull you in during that live moment?
Yeah, and I would add, you think about the journey of the consumer on digital, the journey of a consumer or a sports fan on social. They're doing or watching a TikTok dance. They're putting a crazy filter on themselves from Snapchat. They're polishing up a video sitting courtside at a game. They're sending out a tweet or laughing at something that King Josiah tweets. Like each of these are stops on that journey. Not to mention, if you're on the other side, at the NBA, the NFL, or ESPN, programming across all of these platforms 365 days a year is not an easy job at all. So understanding that this fragmentation exists, it's a real thing, but these sports fans are smart enough and savvy enough to understand what their respective journey looks like on each platform. And then Bo's got the icing on the cake, right? Wherever you are, if you're in the middle of your TikTok dance, if you're in the middle of writing the third draft of your tweet, making sure there's no typos in it, there's a notification that goes off in your pocket that says it's a tie ball game and LeBron's got the ball. So it's really, really interesting to see how the sports landscape has evolved to service sports fans, but it's a really exciting time to watch it unfold.
A follow-up to that, TJ. So speaking of that and talking about the customer journey, what part of the customer journey do you view as the most important as it relates to driving engagement?
I think resonance. Sam mentioned this earlier. The beauty of Twitter is it's the world's largest real-time interest graph. If something is popping, you'll know on Twitter. If something is trash, you'll know on Twitter really, really quickly. So we can gather all of those insights and say, all right, Sam likes Tom Brady. He is a Patriots fan. he might still be interested in seeing Tom Brady drunkenly walk off from a Super Bowl parade. That is a piece of video content that might actually fall within his timeline, right? So understanding what levers that we have to ensure that when you hop into the Twitter app, you're getting the content that you want to see. If Bo likes something, if Sam likes something, the likelihood of me wanting to consume that content is pretty high. And we've learned that over the time. Our algorithms and our curation team have gotten really, really strong. So for us, it's understanding what you care about, what resonates with you, and ensuring that we curate your timeline in a way that elevates that content.
Love that. And this question is for each of you all, because we all have our different perspectives of what we like and enjoy, as TJ kind of just said there about our own journey. And what are some of the most innovative campaigns you've seen over the past 12 months to engage new sports fans? I'd love for each of you all to answer this question.
I'll go first. Sam and I were basically chatting about this in our digital green room, Top Shot. I think that everyone is talking about it right now, and I mean that should say something. But also, it brings back this playfulness of not only tapping into nostalgia of collecting, throwing back to when you used to collect basketball cards, but also just kind of the heightened demand for a digital collectible product, right? I do think that it's the future, right? The fact that it's inherently social, where we talk about what we got, we talk about when the drop is happening, right? It's really taken a product, which is essentially clips that live on Twitter, but it has created kind of a new product in its own, driven by scarcity and kind of the rating system. And it's been a really fun product to kind of test out, talk about with your friends. And again, it's inherently social. So I do think that NBA's done an amazing job of extending a new product like that in a very short amount of time. And it's been impressive to see this growth and engagement.
On that point, Bo, you and I were talking about it, where I think there's so much excitement, especially among both of us, about the product. And I think adding on to that, what's kind of crazy about it is when, I don't know, I'm speaking for myself, but when I see moments happen on TV during games, I think, oh man, like when Edwards did that crazy poster dunk, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be an amazing Top Shot moment. I wonder what that Top Shot moment's going to go for. Like, I think it like creates like sort of, okay, like it connects to what's going on in the actual game. And I also think what's amazing is it's really increasing the value of highlights. I mean, in the past, like highlights are more or less ephemeral. I mean, yeah, you have those moments that live on forever, and on platforms like YouTube, highlights do have a long tail depending on what they are. But I think at this point, using something like Top Shot, like having that idea of ownership, like tokenizing that moment, like capturing that moment in time, I just think it's unbelievable to like really create like a long tail and like a literal like marketplace and place for conversation around like discrete moments. It really like takes our individual moments in our game and bestows them with even more significance than just the game in which they happen. Which we've seen to be really powerful. And, I think what all of us have been talking about is with especially like Gen Z and Gen Alpha fans, I mean, it's really tough. And like, if that's a way that we can get fans in the door and get fans interested because they wanted to, buy some of these collectibles, and that may get them interested in a player and want to watch that player, like we're all about that.
I'll, as a heads up, if there are any prospective job seekers that are watching this right now, if Sam Farber is interviewing you, just mention Top Shot and he'll talk forever, and it'll be the best interview that you've ever had. So that's just a fun fact, right there. You see how excited he got. Anyway, Top Shot is something that has certainly been at the forefront of everybody's discussion in the sports industry. I chat with Sam and Bo about it regularly. And to Sam's point, when you're watching a game, you immediately think, oh, I need that Top Shot. Or if you own a moment that your friends may not own, it gives you that kind of sports shit talk opportunity. I have this moment, you don't. Additionally, I would say over the past 12 months, to your question, two of the initiatives that I've seen that have been really, really interesting have been from the NBA and the NFL. When the pandemic occurred, the immediate thought was, all right, how do we create experiences for fans if they can't be in the arena, if they can't be in the stadium? So you're watching the NBA bubble and you see this beautiful collage of fans actually sitting courtside, sponsored by Michelob Ultra, and it turned into I saw people screenshotting it and posting it on Twitter and posting it on Instagram. So it actually turned into this moment. Did you see me sitting courtside virtually watching this really, really important NBA game? That was a really special moment because it required everyone to think, all right, how do we incorporate fans in this experience and do it in a way that not only delights the fans, but allows the players to look up and see, oh, there's Barack Obama sitting courtside. That's a pretty cool experience. The one with the NFL is one that we had the pleasure of working really closely with them on, called Showtime Camp. For years, celebrations within NFL games have not necessarily been encouraged, but the team at the NFL is like, look, guys want to have fun and guys want to celebrate when they score touchdowns. Let's elevate that. So we worked in tandem with the NFL to actually put cameras in the end zone and encourage celebrations. We saw everything from the cha-cha slide to all types of old school dance moves live in game. You saw players having fun. You saw players smiling. And within that Showtime Camp experience, it was enveloped with fans who were sitting on their couch celebrating with their team. So you actually felt like you were doing touchdown dances with your Green Bay Packers or with your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So those were two really cool examples that I saw of leagues and rights holders bringing fans and connecting them to the live experience without them being actually able to sit in the game.
As a fan of the games and the sports, I'm with you on those. I thought the bubble experience was phenomenal, what the NBA did, the cam for NFL. I mean, just great ways of integration. It's odd now, even with back in our regular stadiums, it's like almost you want the screen back. You're like, can I have the screen back so I can like screenshot myself again, you know? But it's a pretty phenomenal experience. Because we still have time, but I want to go ahead and get an audience question in the midst of all of this. One of the questions that came in is, what are the workflow bottlenecks in the content creation process, and how important is it to be the first notification on device for a story/result? Who wants to take that?
That's a really good question.
I mean, we're typically not in the business of breaking news, so maybe I would defer to TJ or Bo, who's really in the push notification game. I mean, I can answer the workflow bottleneck part. I mean, at this point, when you're talking about, you know, sort of real time distribution of like highlights or short clips and things like that, it's pretty quick. I mean, you know, we have all the feeds, you know, in our facility in Secaucus, or, you know, now sort of virtually wherever the editors are. And, you know, we have the tools to create content really, really fast. So, you know, I think, you know, there might not be too much of a workflow, you know, bottleneck for those types of things from a league perspective. You know, I don't know, maybe TJ, if you want to talk about, you know, what goes on with writers or journalists and like how they think about, you know, being first and how important that is to them.
Yeah, I mean, there is, we can look at Woj and Shams as examples, right? Like there are communities on Twitter that identify themselves as Woj fans and communities on Twitter that identify themselves as Shams fans. And ultimately, it boils down to who got the scoop first, who tweeted it out first. Routinely, players and folks who work at teams discover breaking information by way of the Twitter timeline following Woj and or Sham. So there's certainly, especially on our platform, we believe that we're the live conversational layer of the platform of the world. If something is happening in real time, that conversation is unfolding on Twitter. So with respect to Twitter, speed is certainly important, but authenticity and credibility is important as well. If Woj tweets something out, you feel pretty strongly that it is going to occur, or that it is true. Oftentimes, we've seen the opposite happen. People jump to a headline, or people jump to break news, and the news is incorrect. That ends up not being too good for them on Twitter, right? So while it is important to be timely and to be relevant, it's also important to be credible and to have the right information. But as it relates to just sports consumption in general, the thing I love about what Bo is building is there's a bit of social equity. There's a bit of social cachet when you're texting in the group chat and somebody hits you with that Twitter game-winning shot highlight, and you raise your hand and say, "I saw that live." No, I was watching that live, and that was crazy, right? Like, you almost use it as an opportunity to brag, like, I was watching that moment live. And what Buzzer is doing is democratizing that, which is the secret sauce of what we do with Twitter, with real-time moments. And now there's a platform that allows you accessibility to that live moment, so you can be the first person to tweet about it.
TJ's throwing up the oops, so I got to dunk it now. So I appreciate that, TJ. I do think that immediacy is very important, but also in an era where after this panel, you're going to look at your phone and you're going to have a dozen notifications, right? And so for us is really thinking about how do we behaviorally create habit where we are the first right swipe from the lock screen, right? And so curation and personalization is going to be very important. And we're really seeking to understand what a sports fan is interested in based off of not only their social graph, whether it be Twitter or Instagram, and based off of who you follow will trigger alerts for you, or you go in explicitly and say, hey, I'm TJ, here are the teams I'm interested in, here are the players I'm interested in, here are my fantasy roster or my bet slips, because I'm connecting some of my betting operator accounts on. Or you can just be geo-based and say, hey, I'm from the Maryland area. Alert me when DMV sports are playing, right? And so we do think that personalization is going to be very important. To TJ's point, Gen Z is all about being first, right? Go on Instagram and open up a Drake post or a Bieber post. People are commenting first, right? Because that is a signal to their social graph saying, yo, I got here first and I'm commenting first, right? The same way, TJ and I are in a few, group DMs, and that poor friend, we all know who that is, will send a super late post, right? From like yesterday. You wonder why that person's on Twitter in the first place, right? And so we call them late. You're late, and so you see these cultural phenomenons happening where we value immediacy, we value being first, right? And we are definitely building tools and features like digital tokens and badges where we can certify you being first, and so that you can use that as social currency, amongst your friends. So that is one of the kind of the strategies at Buzzer, where we are really encouraging the younger generation to kind of lean into our platform by creating different digital goods and tokens so that it commemorates that first social currency.
Bo, I have a follow-up. It's a direct question for you. What challenges do you face needing to work with traditional media partners for authentication and rights, but then potentially being perceived as accelerating their disruption?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the biggest messages right out of the gate is how we are a partner, and how we are a complement, not a cannibalizer, right? And so our biggest position as a product is that we are addressing an audience that is not addressable through television, right? And to take it a step further, we are building a robust, aggregated and unified authentication product, so that in a way we could argue user retention or customer retention by creating new value of your existing subscriptions, right? We're in a world right now where everything is unbundled, where you're sitting in front of a television and you launch your Apple TV interface, and you're going in and out of HBO, Netflix, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, Peacock, and so forth. And so we're in an era where we don't even know what we're paying for anymore. Content discovery is tremendously difficult, right? And so if we can just be that aggregating tool that organizes all of your subscriptions in a way that what you're interested in and what you're a fan of, and we make that discoverable to you, maybe there is a new value to a customer of, you know what, my cable subscription is very valuable to me because I'm watching all of this for free, right? And so we are really trying to be a partner, and that I kind of nod my time during at Twitter, because Twitter has been a platform that is very partner minded of how to really complement not only the traditional media partners but also the new media partners as well. And so we're aiming to be a bridge of bridging that gap in generation, specifically when it comes to engagement in the live window, and attempting to make the ecosystem healthier.
Love that. TJ, I'll toss this to you. Do you have any advice or recommendations for those considering to build their own platform? I know, Bo, you just did this. Love to hear perspective from all three of you, but I'll start with you, TJ.
Yeah, one is understanding what it is that makes specific sports fans get excited. It might be highlights. It might be really, really, really deep storytelling. It might be aggregating the performance piece, or how many points did my guy score, what are the wins and losses, alongside, oh, LeBron is a wine collector. What kind of wine does he like, right? Like, so the storytelling piece coupled with the actual performance piece. Another thing that we see time and time again on our platform is having a really, really authentic voice, knowing what your voice is and being authentic to that voice. Because if you are planning to deliver or delight sports fans with content, with a specific tone, with a specific voice, make sure it's authentic to your property, make sure it's authentic to that audience, because if it's not, you'll hear about it, right? And fans will be less inclined to want to have a sustained affinity for your platform. So being authentic, understanding the importance of storytelling, understanding that sports doesn't just live in a silo anymore. Sports, culture, hip hop, lifestyle is all kind of intertwined, and there's a ton of intersectionality there. So not presenting or providing sports to fans as a monolith, doing it in a very layered and thoughtful way, I think is something that should ultimately be prioritized.
Sam, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, I definitely agree with what TJ said. I think to give like kind of a B schoolish answer to build off of what TJ said is, I think you need to have a very clear value proposition and a differentiated offering in the marketplace. You have to have a really like a clear understanding of the marketplace. But what's really key is actually combining that with what TJ said. So I actually think back to a strategy class I took in business school, many years ago now, and there were basically like two elements to differentiating yourself in a marketplace that this particular professor talked about. And one was finding areas of high variance. So where, some companies are really good at them, some companies are not really good at this feature or this particular value proposition, but also finding areas of high variance that people care about. So if you're really good at something and you're differentiated, but the thing you're good at or the value proposition or the thing you're differentiated at is something that nobody really cares about, then you're probably not going to succeed. Like, you're solving a problem nobody has. You may be solving a problem, but it's not a problem anyone really cares about. So I think, if you think about like what Bo is doing, like Bo's thinking about, among other things, he's thinking about, aggregation, like discovery, like in this fragmented media ecosystem that we're in, the content discovery is basically impossible. Like, everything is so unbundled. It's so like just completely spread across everything. It's so diverse and disparate, and that you need something to help you navigate. And so like, that is, that's an area of high variance. There's sort of a range in how companies address that. And two, I think that's a problem like almost everyone would agree that they have. So that would be my sort of like highfalutin answer to that question. But I think it's exactly what TJ's saying, sort of at its core, is like, know what people want and do that.
On to Sam. Sam was actually one of the first meetings that I had after leaving Twitter, just to get a little bit of courage to actually leave Twitter itself. So shout out to Sam for getting me to this position where I was encouraged by a value partner such as the NBA to say, hey, this is a problem that we have. This is a challenge. This is very valuable for us as your prospective partner if you can solve this for us. But to add on to that, what we are actively building is what we call, to borrow a term from another industry, last mile tech when it comes to live ephemeral moments in sports. And what I mean by that is, there is a fleeting moment that is happening, live on television, and more often than not, you'll hear about it on Twitter, right? And if you see the tweet itself, and you're watching the game, great. You're engaging with the tweet. That's what we call NBA Twitter. It's a very flush, engaging community, right? But if not, then you have that triggered feeling of FOMO, right? And so, in essence, Buzzer is trying to monetize that FOMO, or trying to make that content discoverable for you, but also give you that easy access to that moment. Because we do know that if it takes too long, you need to download an ad or an app or remember your login. By the time you do that, it's done, right? And so when that moment is happening, how do we get you to that content the quickest way possible? That is our fundamental challenge as a company, and something that we're really trying to solve in addition to content discovery and curation.
Yeah, I just thought about Bo. It just feeds back into what you all spoke about earlier about being first and what that feels like. I think Buzzer creates that opportunity that you're automatically first, and everybody has a feeling that they get to be first with Buzzer. And that's what they don't want to feel last. You don't want to be the last one in the group chat that's 24 hours late and we're all like, we're done with this conversation. So,
Absolutely.
we're running a little low in time. So I want to make sure I get another final question in and give you guys some opportunity here. But lastly, what do you think is next for our evolving fan? Where or how do you see them evolving next? For all of our fans of sport, where do you see us going? How do you see the fan actually evolving? Would like to start.
I'll start. I do. In lieu of TJ's new name of, if you go on his Twitter account, he is now to be addressed as NFTJ. I think NFTs are super interesting, and then people are learning about it. It's been around for years, and I do think that in the last month, a lot of focus has come to NFTs. And when I think about where is Buzzer's place in NFTs, I always think about the Bobby Thompson corollary of the game that of the shot heard around the world. And if you ask an average fan of where they were they actually there, you'll probably get 100x of the actual answer itself, right? And so when I think about my childhood, I used to collect ticket stubs, and because I wanted to prove that I was there, and if it happened to be an epic Game 7 game, I wanted to prove that I was there. And I have a drawer full of those ticket stubs. And so I think a ton about how do you digitize that live ticket stub, and how do we recreate that experience on Buzzer, right? And so one of the ideas that I've kind of given my team is, how do we create an NFT or blockchain certified live game stub, but you experience that live moment on Buzzer, right? I got that, Luka buzzer beater, or I saw that walk-off homer by Mookie Betts. How do we commemorate that moment live and certify that via blockchain, right? And so those are things that I'm kind of thinking about. I do think that's next, because the better that we can commemorate and certify the emotions that you feel, right? I think will make the live sports experience a lot more compelling, a lot more social. We are also thinking about how do we lean into other platforms, right? And so very leaned into not only Twitter, but also Snapchat and Instagram and also TikTok. And how do we, to TJ's point, lean into the consumer journey specifically for a sports fan and really augment their experience on Snapchat and on TikTok, right? And so, the things that we're actively thinking about is reaction cams. how do you quickly snap a reaction on buzzer and then quickly be able to share that on socials? Because I do know that Snap and TikTok are all about self-expression, and Twitter is all about, that second screen live experience and the conversation itself. And I think that Apple has, through its picture-in-picture technology, have made it a lot easier for you to actually look at a live video and jump around apps. So we intend to really lean into that.
I'll hop in. One of the things that I'm really excited about is the growing and evolving format that is audio. Right, Twitter has really began to lean into the audio space. We've launched spaces, and we've seen a ton of amazing feedback from properties, from media publishers, and most importantly, from creators, from individuals who say, I've worked so hard to build this audience on Twitter, and I've been looking for a way to connect with them in a really thoughtful manner that hasn't existed in the past. And the beauty of it is, what we've seen in the past is in 2016, much thanks to Bo and the live team at the time, we launched this partnership with the NFL to have Thursday Night Football on Twitter. And it was beautiful because docked atop the timeline was a live NFL game, and below it was the timeline. And that experience is one that we learned a ton from. So when you think about audio and you think about what the user experience is, the audio is docked on your timeline, but you can scroll through and still have your standard Twitter experience, which is really, really awesome for us. So I'm excited to see how we continue to lean into it, how the broader industry continues to evolve with the audio format. Obviously, Clubhouse has done some really amazing things, and I'd imagine that folks like Locker Room and others have some really great plans in place too. So the audio format is one that is exciting. It's booming. I think it's here to stay, and we'll start to see innovation off of it. And I'm pumped about it.
Yeah, we're super excited about audio, and we've been, we're excited to play around with spaces. We've actually had a couple of watch parties the last few weeks during our Saturday night ABC games on Clubhouse, and it's been unbelievable. I mean, we actually only, invite a couple of hosts and a couple of guests in. By the end of the night, it's 10, 12, legends, celebrities, investors, this amazing cross-section of people. And the conversation is unbelievable to accompany the game. But, I think to answer the specific question, I'm excited about sort of personalizing the game viewing experience, and also bringing our content to places that people are spending a lot of time. For example, how do we make an offering for Epic Games and Fortnite? I mean, Travis Scott had a concert there. How do we play in that space? And how do we make ourselves relevant in a space that people are spending a lot of time? People are spending tons of time playing NBA 2K. They basically have a second life there, not to hearken the old Second Life platform that existed many years ago. But, people, spend so much time there. How do we bring our content there? How do we, go deeper with betting operators, for people who want that type of angle? So I think for us, what I'm really excited about is bringing, a new sort of angle, literally in camera angles, but sort of bringing a new vibe to game, viewing experiences and game consumption experiences, because I think that's what our fans are increasingly demanding. I just don't think that, a one size fits all approach works. And I know that our linear partners all understand that and have been doing a lot with different types of camera angles and different talent, and pregame streams and co-viewing experiences. But I think that's where things are going. And I think, there will be a really delicate balance of making sure that we're personalizing, but making sure that we're not over personalizing to the point where it's micro communities of 4 people. So I think it's make sure you have a robust community, but also make sure that the offering fits what they want.
Awesome. Well, we are down to the wire. We only have a few seconds left here. I think that was a great way to finish us off. Thank you all so much for your time today. I hope everybody walks away with some new insights and knowledge, and continuing to build our platforms and create amazing journeys for our customers. Thank you so much.